This is an overview of the themes that you wrote about for Huckleberry Finn. I'm going to mention some of them, and I'm going to try to bring in some new information in my discussion of those themes. Only one person mentioned that this was a picaresque novel, and that person really didn't develop that idea, but you didn't have to tell me that it was a picaresque novel, and that's one thing that I want to talk about. This novel is a picaresque novel which has its origins in Spain in the 16th century. The word is Spanish for picaro, which means rogue or rascal, and Huck Finn certainly fits that characteristic. The picaresque novel has certain characteristics, and those characteristics also happen to be themes, and many of those themes you mentioned. For example, the picaresque novel follows the adventures of the hero, usually a young person, and we certainly have that in Huckleberry Finn. The hero lives by his wits in a corrupt society. We see this in Huck Finn living in a world where slavery exists. And this is another one of the themes that you mentioned. There is a constant battle between Huck and civilization. He does not want to be civilized. The picaresque novel deals with realism. This is true of this type of literature after the Civil War. You remember from the little videos that I had in web links which talk about realism and naturalism, writers want to show life as it is during this period of time. There was less interest in Romanticism, where literature dealt with mystery, the supernatural, love and death, with a strong authorial presence. In realism and naturalism, the author becomes invisible, and this certainly happens in Huckleberry Finn. Even though Mark Twain is writing the novel ultimately and guiding and controlling everything, the story is told through the eyes of Huck Finn. The picaresque novel has humor. We have that with Huck Finn in his many adventures and the way that he views them. For example, we see this with Huck's view about Widow Douglas trying to civilize him and teach him religion. We see this with Huck's superstitions and the way he solves problems. Huck gives more credence to superstitions. We see this time and time again in the novel, and he doesn't give much credence to religion. For example, when he says that Widow Douglas grumbled over the food, giving a prayer, he didn't see how it changed the food any. Huck is very practical and thinks that if you do something, there's going to be a consequence. And if you, like the superstitions with the spider tying up his hair, he saw consequences with that. The next point right here, the picaresque novel deals with satire, where the author makes fun or exaggerates something about society. We see this time and time with Huck Finn. We see it with the chapters on the king and the duke, where they dupe the townspeople. We see it in the feud between the Grangerfords and the Shepherdsons. And remember when Huck asks about the origins of the feud, his friend can't tell him. The picaresque novel is written in the first-person point of view. Huck writes this story. He even talks about writing the story, and at the end, remember, he talks about he'll never write another novel if he knew how difficult it was to write. This is unusual for the time. We see the world through Huck's eyes, his innocence, which is another theme. The picaro is usually poor. Even though Huck has money, it does not play a large role in his life. If he had money, he would use it. Even though he has some money, he doesn't have a lot of access to it. The picaresque novel has a loose plot. Huck Finn has a thin plot. The novel is made up of mostly adventures. Usually, the main character does not change in a picaresque novel, and it is debatable whether Huck has changed by the time the novel ends. For example, even though Huck accepts Jim as a human being, does Huck accept all African Americans as humans? Some may argue that even Huck does not treat Jim all that great in the novel. For example, the last several chapters, where Tom and Huck basically torture Jim just for fun and games, have bothered many readers over the years. And some people even argue that that throws the novel off by bringing Tom Sawyer back into the book. The picaresque novel shows realism through real dialects, slang, and language. And someone even mentioned in your essay discussions that the dialect was almost impossible to read. It is like reading a foreign language. Next point. The picaresque novel shows a character untouched by the rules of society, and many of you mentioned this theme. There's a constant battle between Huck and society, the rules of society. He wants to light up for the territory anytime somebody wants to civilize him. There are also other themes. The journey quest is one of the major themes of the novel, and the journey quest happens to be one of the major themes of literature. It's what's known as an archetype. It's a universal theme. That's what archetype means. For example, Star Wars is basically a journey quest movie, journey quest theme. Usually the character on the journey learns something about himself and grows. Many of you mentioned Huck's battle with civilization, religion, and the mores or beliefs of the time. These are also themes which many of you mentioned. Race is another theme. Many people over the years have debated whether the novel is racist. The N word is mentioned countless times. Actually, it's mentioned so many times it's disturbing. And people have asked, is it necessary? Is the novel a racist novel? Even though Huck ultimately accepts Jim, does he accept others? Gender is also a theme, which we will see in other stories this semester. What does Huck Finn reveal about masculinity? Is he the stereotypical male? Does he make any differences about being male? How does being male inform everything that he does? You could also say that transgender themes are apparent when Huck dresses as a woman in the course of the novel. What does Huck reveal about women and being a woman when he dresses up that way and talks to the woman? Sexuality is also a theme because some have debated whether Jim and Huck have a homoerotic relationship because of the time on the boat, and Jim also calls Huck honey many times. And some have argued that the boat and the cave are seen as keeping house. They're like husband and wife. Alienation is also a theme because Huck is a loner, the pioneer, which is the epitome of the American spirit of adventure. And we're going to see this time and time again. That's one of the quintessential themes in American literature. What does it mean to be an American? The novel even ends with Huck lighting up for the territory. He is the pioneer heading west. You did a great job of discussing the themes. The above is also hints at things that we will see as we go through the semester. You might even see these things and write about these things that you see in other works of literature. You did a great job on the first assignment, and this little recording is simply an attempt to kind of pull things together and show you some new things to see in the novel. I hope it helps, and if you made it this far to the end, thanks.